Close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste what's left. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go.
tuning in, and thank you for that. I'm already stumbling over my words, but thank you for joining the joint collegiate panel caster Q&A, as the most ambitious crossover of all time is coming out between Collegiate R6 and CEA Siege. My name is CDAPS, and I will be moderating this panel, trying to make sure that no train wrecks occur. But that might be a little bit easier said than done when we're joined by a whole slew of talent, including the wonderful Keglunic, wonderful Loaf,
Hello?
and the kind of wonderful Crow.
Crow, you gonna take that?
Already out here throwing shade, and we're not even a couple minutes in.
CDAPS doesn't get paid for casting, so I don't want to hear it.
Yeah. You know, that's going to be one of the points we can talk about later. So you go ahead and talk about that. But I guess if we want to go ahead and get this all started, I guess a really great way to start would be talking about sort of an introduction for each of you guys and your casting backgrounds, and specifically why you started casting or why you wanted to get into the scene.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I'll go ahead and I'll start off first. Hi, I'm Loaf, also Jessica Bird. Go by Loaf online. I got started casting probably about around 10 months ago now, in September of last
I guess
year.
if we want to go ahead and
I got started through completely and totally inane way. I was at one of my college esports clubs meetings, and I was messing around on OBS on my computer. And our faculty advisor came up to me and he was like, "Hey, you seem to know what you're doing with that program. You want to be a part of our stream team because none of our games get streamed at all." And I said, "Sure, why not?" And through that, I kind of slowly got introduced into the world of casting and broadcasting. And I got started out with, I think CRSL was the first ever official like cast I did. Then I did some work for CR6 and CEA, and I've slowly built my way up from there. Yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Do you want to go next, Keg?
I mean, if you want me to, it's a fairly long story, all things considered. So I apologize. Strap in, everybody. So I started. I'm a little bit more seasoned when it comes to commentating, which I mean we're all on the same level here. So I don't know if that says a lot about my experience or lack thereof, or how great these other commentators that we have tonight have evolved over the amount of time they've been around in the scene. But I started in 2007. No, I'm sorry, 2016. All things considered. Again, like I think everyone here, I started very innately with a small FGC game on Steam called Brawlhalla. And so pretty much what happened was I got home from school one day, and I was a junior in high school at the time. And some kid on my friends list messages me and is like, "Hey, do you want to play in our tournament?" And I go, "No, I'm terrible." But around this time, I realized I have a decently nice voice, and I kind of wanted to gear myself towards being on TV and kind of like a production kind of aesthetic or niche, I suppose. And so I was like, "Hey, I can work on your tournament." And he's like, "Yeah, do you want to cast? We don't have any casters." So, yeah, screw it. Why not? And so I started from there. And I think we talk about this later on in the little cheat sheet script we have, but it went terribly. And honestly, it went terribly for a very long time. And it was only after I took a really long break in college from 2018 to pretty much a few months ago, like in May. So around a year and a half to 2 year break is when I really evolved as not only a person, not only as a content creator, but also as a caster as well, and learn how to conduct myself professionally to hopefully be just as good as the people you see here. But I'm still trying. I look up to everybody here.
Wow.
Yeah.
What kind words.
Yeah.
You do have a lovely voice. Your voice is
do.
probably the hottest amongst us four. But the way I started probably in an even more mundane way. I'm going to out mundane all of you. What happened was, whereas, Love comes from Collegiate, CDAPS comes from Collegiate, Keg comes from Brawlhalla, I started with T3 in Siege. So, if we consider the tiers of Siege, you have the pro level at tier 1, Challenger League is tier 2, tier 3, and then Collegiate, typically. No offense to Collegiate. But
No, I mean, that's pretty much the way the tiers have worked out.
So what happened was I was in a Discovery Queue match on the new cafe when it came out last year. And I met a dude named Christian, and we were just chatting it up. We were talking about esports, and he was like, "Man, you seem to know your stuff." And I was like, "Yeah, I have seen. I started when this game came out on console. I have seen probably every Pro League match ever. So I know all the history and stuff like that. Yeah, I have. It's it's both an accomplishment and something to be ashamed about." He was like, "Yeah, you seem to know your stuff. You want to cast?" And I was like, okay, sure. I have nothing to lose. I always thought it was, fun. I used to annoy my friends by repeating everything Kix and Nintero would say about half a second after. So I always thought casting would be pretty fun. And it turns out he was an admin for ESA. So I got him with ESA. I did my first couple of casts with him. My first big cast was actually their grand finals with Jazzman. If you guys watch T3, you probably know Jazzman, the underage caster. And from there, I was ESA. I stayed with them for a while. Got picked up by AGN. I duoed with Loaf for a while. Loaf and I were probably the first consistent duo.
We've been a duo for the past, I would say, I said 10 months earlier, but that was really when I got started casting. So I'd say probably about 8 or 9 months. We've been doing pretty much since then with light smittenings of other people we've cast with, but we've done just about everything under the sun as far as casting together.
Yeah, we did ESA, we did AGN, we did EPS. We did invite quals. We got to cast.
We did invite quals. We did Challenger League quals.
That's our claim to fame. We got to cast SSG, kick some ass.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been Loaf had to take a break. Loaf took a break. I was just everywhere. So if you've seen T3, you've probably heard me cast at this point.
Probably.
So that's my story.
Yeah, your guys' stories are a little bit more nice and linear. Mine's kind of like a fast track when you think about the growth that you guys specifically have had. Like Keg sort of evolved through everything with this nice, beautiful, wonderful, as Cherish calls it, sultry voice. A nice vocabulary word. But I guess I started directly with CEA because Duke just wanted me to cast because they were kind of running out of casters due to people graduating and leaving the scene and stuff like that. So the first time I ever casted was a CEA show match of the Invite All-Stars versus the Open All-Stars with someone by the name of Loaf.
Yeah.
As my casting duo, my first
I remember
time
that.
casting.
Yeah.
Yes, we're sitting there in the call on Parsec. Our observer crashes 4 times in a row.
Yep.
So in total, we got to cast maybe a round and a half over the span of an hour.
Yep.
And I'm sitting there trying to talk. I'm trying to get my feet out under me. I'm cutting Loaf off. I'm saying stupid stuff and just absolute chaos. Horrible, bad. Can't call any of it a success besides the fact that I got a bunch of really good constructive criticism coming out of Loaf with her experience kind of like getting drilled into me in it wasn't a very fun way, but it definitely was necessary. So after that, I just continued casting for CEA, becoming like one of the main consistent casters, usually doing like 1 or 2 broadcasts a week. So ultimately, I did get brought onto the ESA team at the end of last season for playoffs. Then now I'm continuing in with that. Both Keg and Crow are also on that little production team with me. Loaf has a spot if she wants to come back, but we don't know where that's going so far.
Yeah, no, there's some other stuff I've been working on recently, but yeah, I did do ESA a while. That's kind of there's a big gap, and then I did ESA for the most part. That's been my main casting gig, but as of recent, I've kind of taken a step back from that.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things. It's like trying to juggle all of your class work if you play on any sort of teams. I don't know if you guys play in competitive at all.
I actually did. That's actually part of how I got started. I kind of left it out, but I got into competitive Siege in general. And that's how I found out about CAA, CR6, and all that is because I started out. I was on the B team of my university's competitive Siege team. And I actually have. I'll find it here in a minute. I actually have my jersey still. We actually managed to get jerseys.
Yep, NCSU has our jerseys as well. That's also how I got started. I did kind of gloss over that as well.
Yeah, but
with NCSU. Fun
yeah, but you can my former teammates can attest. I was a garbage player, and it just sort of feeds into the adage of casters cannot play the game worth anything. Just
there are some exceptions, but
there are some exceptions.
I don't
think
know.
Probably Kix and Stokes are probably the 2 most notable exceptions. Everyone else, it's like,
win.
Oh yeah.
We're Plat 3 Gold 1 at best.
My little
We
sister
have-
can beat me in Siege.
Are you serious?
Probably.
That's embarrassing, man. At least I'm plat too, man.
Yeah, my rank has been very, very volatile depending on how hard I want to try.
I just don't
But
care anymore.
I played
Exactly.
Silver 3 this season, man. I don't know what you're talking about.
I've gotten into gold for the first time in like 2 seasons just because of how everything has been going. But
Oh man.
I mean, going from a competitive background of like actually trying to understand the game at a deeper level, I think that actually also sort of propelled me into a more analytical caster role because I'm newer to PC. I've been playing on PC for about maybe 2 years total. I was always a console pleb until I moved to college. So like I don't have the raw mechanical skill. So it's kind of like if I really want to win games and win gunfights, it's like, oh, I have to outbrain people. So if you have that process and that game knowledge, and you're able to communicate it to other people, such as with casting, then that's a really nice innate skill that's helped propel all of us into a somewhat prominent position in this T3 scene, or however you want to call it, with Collegiate as well.
Well, I don't know if you can call just being on PC for 2 years an excuse, man.
Oh no, I'm not making an excuse.
Listen, my boys, Polar Ace and Spiker, they're all
Well, they're nuts.
numbers, less than a year, and they're in CL. Unfortunately, Spiker is down fighting for their lives. The Polar Ace is doing good.
Yeah,
They're
Blurs
doing-
is doing really well right now.
Yeah.
They have Razor from Team Reckless. Inrio's nuts.
Oh, Enrio's crazy.
hmm
Like
Also, if you-
imagine a really good player, right? And then multiply it by 10. That's Enrio.
That's Inrio. Same thing for Young Alec on Spiker. actually.
See, Crow's out here talking about Spiker, and we're just glossing over the fact that a team that we cast on a regular basis, 4 out of the 5 of those members are currently in Pro League. Team
Oh, yeah.
Oblivion. Team
Oblivion.
Oblivion. We cast them for like probably a solid 3 months, like the last 3 months that they were in like tier 3 competitive Siege, because they were all underage. Then none of them could actually compete in Challenger League. And then look at the next season. Oh, Iconic from Oblivion is now on the Susquehanna Sonics. Oh, NJR is on Disrupt.
Yeah,
and
and they're-
here comes
they're the best-
Lags and I'm gonna forget his name. Yeah, Lags and J90 here are subbing in for the Sonics while they're waiting for Slebin and Gomfy.
That's why we need Quantum to come back, dude.
Absolutely, but yeah, I mean it's just absolutely nuts just seeing. That's also something that comes from the sort of tier 3 scene that I've noticed a little bit more is you get to see growth from a lot of these people. Sometimes you get worried sometimes because I've seen teams that were really, really good and have just kind of stayed in the same place, haven't gotten any better. And then I've seen teams like Oblivion, and then you've got Spiker as well that have come out of nowhere. I mean, Nordic as well. We cast Nordic, one of the current CAPL teams. We've cast them before, and they're now sitting in Pro League. So yeah, I mean, being able to see that growth from the bottom up is really, really interesting to see. I think it's probably one of the better things that comes out of tier 3.
Definitely.
Even that's happening Collegiate as well. I
Yeah.
believe that there's another panel next week talking about this traditional, like the actual transition from Collegiate to Pro League. I know there's a good amount of teams on the Canadian side with Canadian Pro League. I think they were from Simon Fraser plus Ziggler's from Buffalo.
Mhm.
Yeah, like
Mhm.
Coffee and I think Spectrum.
Yeah, that team. Yeah,
That
Simon
team.
Fraser, and then the University de Montreal team also made it really far. They faced up against Nordic and lost to Nordic. And I think
York made it as well.
Who's the
York did
other?
pretty well.
There was another university as well that made it decently far, and I can't.
I think York got Challenger League with Headless and a couple other people.
Crow and I have cast them before, and I can't remember their name. It was one of the ones we cast back in CRSL.
Who?
A Canadian team, French Canadian team, and I can't remember their name.
Too many Frenchies for me to remember, man.
That's also the other thing is that tier 3, the top, it's just French Canadians, like straight up. They're something in the water.
Honor. What do they feed them?
Nobu. They're all. I don't know. I don't know what's up with them.
French toast.
I don't know, man. It's they put something in the water up there in Montreal.
Tango sent us a question.
Oh, did he?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I guess we can go
I
ahead and
forgot this is
It's
this
like
is,
it's like the
and we
episode
got-
of Blue's Clues where you get the letter.
yeah. So
we
I
just
forgot
got a
I forgot this is
question.
a panel, and we're actually supposed to like answer.
Yeah,
stuff.
we actually have a flow chart of how we're supposed to be doing this, but we aren't doing it at all.
Nah, we're already off the rails.
What's the
Yeah,
big caster sin?
Come on, do your job, CDAPS.
I'm trying. I just don't want to cut you guys off because you're making good points.
See,
But
the
I
thing
guess
about the thing
caster
about
sins. Go,
biggest
bro.
caster sin is that I've probably committed all of them. So
Yeah,
I
you have.
don't know which one would be the biggest. Probably.
I mean, it's hard to say what the biggest caster sin because I feel like that really falls into the pet peeve category. Like I have pet
Yeah.
peeves when it comes to co-casters, and then there's also pet peeves about what I hear from other people. For when, I'm a casual listener listening to a broadcast, there's a difference between how you want to conduct yourself when it comes to, let's say, an FGC game, so like a fighting game or like a first-person shooting game. But I'm going to gloss over that really quickly and go for the real important part for this question. And that's you don't want to be too casual about it. And I feel like a lot of the T3, no offense to T3s, but a lot of those casters in below, and that not even just Siege, it's just in general, tend to conduct themselves really amateurly. Now, my brain obviously works different than most people for whatever reason. That's not like a flex or anything either. It's just the way it is for me. But stuff like that where you just treat it too casually and don't really know how to make yourself conductive and exactly what to do comes off as really cringeworthy, and it shows a lot about not only who you are but your experience. And it's like a thin veil. It's like a wax paper almost. Like it's a little glossed over, but we all know what's on the other side, and it's just it's not something I like. But if you don't mind me continuing, I think the biggest pet peeve I have from caster to caster is just talking too much. And I'm doing that a little bit right now, but there have been plenty of casts where it's like, we discussed beforehand where it's like, hey, all right, so let's give ourselves maybe like an approximate 45 seconds each,
Yeah.
right? So we can throw it against each other. But then these casters, right? They'll talk for the entirety of a round, say in Siege, or minutes on end.
Mm.
And like you don't want to interrupt them because that's also another, cardinal casting sin.
Yeah.
So you just kind of sit there patiently waiting, like gritting your teeth, waiting for that opportunity to shine. And it really throws the whole tempo of the entire production off. And when it comes down to, I'm sorry, I'm talking too much.
No,
I'm
go
doing the sin.
I was about to say probably the biggest, like probably that boils down to, I think you can boil that down to is the biggest sin is breaking the flow of a cast. I think
Oh,
that is
yeah.
probably I think that is probably what is considered the cardinal sin of a cast is breaking the flow of it, not recognizing, okay, I only need to be talking for this long, or oh, I'm stepping on the other caster's toes, or oh, I'm doing this and it's not flowing as well as it should. I think that's probably what it boils down to the most.
We had
is
trouble
just,
with that until we started getting into a groove.
oh yeah, I think probably our first like month and a half worth of casting.
We would consistently like interrupt each other and be
We
like,
would interrupt
that's-
each other.
that's
We'd
the
talk for
growing
like 3
process.
minutes. We talk for like 3 minutes at a time each. I think probably the biggest thing that like pushed me to make that better for me at least was I got some feedback on my casting from Stokes. I sent him one of my VODs and I was like, hey, he's like, yeah, because I had been in a couple of his streams. I mentioned is like, hey, and he was like, oh, I've never like heard your casting. I've heard of you, but I've never heard any of your casting. So if you want to send a VOD my way or something so I can give you some feedback, just send me whatever. And I sent him a VOD over, and he is one of the most blunt people ever, and I will always thank him for that because he railed me for my casting. Because he was like, the core of it is very good, but you're making all these little mistakes that make it very, very bad as a whole. And I have taken all those to heart, and I have just tried to implement as much of that into my casting as much. One of them was it was little things like making sure you make a pause in if you're pausing to throw it off to the other caster, especially online, make it very deliberate, make that silence sort of hang in the air so the other caster knows, okay, it's time for me to talk now. And another one is to use the game clock to figure out how long you're talking, because that is That's something I used to do all the time. Is I would talk for 2-3 minutes at a time. I mean, heck, I even did it on land. The one land that I've ever cast, I talked over my co-caster for probably 5 minutes straight. Neon, if you're watching this, I feel so bad for you, and I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's one of the things, though, right? So I think the biggest change for me as a caster, I feel like my greatest, like, not to pat myself on the back, but I feel like my greatest strength as a caster is my flexibility. Like,
Mhm.
a lot of people I noticed, like, when two duos, EUL, when two duos have never duoed before, there's always that kind of like tension, right? Like, you can tell they're not used to each other. I feel like my greatest strength is because like in my daily life, in school, in high school, and all of that stuff, I was always a really cordial person. Like, I can get along with everyone. Like, if person A and person C like hate each other's freaking guts, like, I can still be friends with both of them. Like, that doesn't bother me. I'm just a friendly person. So I feel like that's kind of helped in my casting. It's really easy for me to try and like feel someone out and get their flow down. But I feel like my biggest change as a caster was finally like pushing myself to stop being lazy and take notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, that's a
I think I
huge
was
one.
part of that push as well. As I pushed you because I was like showing you my notes, and I was talking about, oh, it was like this person did this in his last game. It's like, what? It's like, I was like, you should probably be taking notes as well. And he was like, notes. What is this about? I don't need any notes. What do you mean?
I've been playing chess. So I'm 20. I have been playing chess for the past 16 years of my life. So I have a really good chess memory, right? Like, I can recount whole chess games move for move, and that's really helped when it comes to Siege. I can usually recount, entire rounds just from memory, but notes have really come in handy just boiling down to statistics, like how someone's won a fight.
Entries, all that stuff.
Entry deaths is huge for me. Like, if I miss an entry, I will go back in the VOD, like desync myself from the clean feed just to find it and resync again. So I feel like that was probably the biggest change. And like you said, Keg, like the whole like being too casual kind of thing, I'm very guilty of that. I am extremely guilty of that. Just because, like, if the environment I'm in is really casual, I will just cut loose. Like, AGN has told me, like, they're like, we didn't pick you up to be professional. We picked you up, like, we didn't hire you to cast the way we want. We hired you because we liked you and the way you cast. So I was like, okay, screw it. They let me curse on stream sometimes, which is fun. Like, that's the league. Like, EPS, I stay super professional. ESA, ESA,
It's middle. It's like the middle.
ESA, we have this joke that whenever we're casting, Crow's brain turns off at about 11:45 p.m.
Yeah.
and he
And
just goes complete stupid mode
and
after
if I'm
about
casting
11:45.
Kyle, it's very gay. It's a very gay cast. But
Mhm.
AGN is just where I'm allowed. Like, I feel like it's a nice breather. Just like cut loose and just do whatever I want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you guys talked about like the big giant overarching things. I guess I could kind of like go into the nitpicky things about casting. Like, one giant thing that holds a lot of casters back, especially as they're starting, would be like the idea of crutch words and constantly relying on certain phrases. Because at the end of the day, you're talking for a long period of time. You're trying to you're doing it live. You're sitting there, you're relaying the information that you're seeing into a way that is understandable for other people. So I know specifically, whenever I would take over from another caster, like they would pass off to me, I would say, and now we see. And I would like stall out for just a couple of seconds for me to really get my feet under the ground and be okay. And now we see they're droning here, and then they're doing this, and they're doing this. But when you're on for a couple of hours and you say that 1,500 times, it really brings down the level of the cast. And I know in Taro has a giant Reddit post about a bunch of stuff like this. If somebody could link, I guess I could link that in chat for people. It's like, one thing is having a big vocabulary.
Yeah, read it.
And just
Yeah,
I can read off some stuff.
one of the biggest things is talking about vocabulary is those crutch words you talk about. I've for me it's been filler words. It's and it's just like those sorts of things is one of the biggest things I struggled with early on. I still kind of struggle with them, but I've made a very conscious effort to try and pull them out of my vocabulary because they were such a big part of it. But yeah, that's one of the biggest things that I think helps separate a good caster from a great caster is being able to. It's not only being able to cast over the game and understand what's going on, but as well to have the solid vocabulary and good. I don't really know how to phrase it. Just have, boiling it down to the most simple thing, have good words. That's pretty much it.
Well, I would say when it comes down to it, it's really just public speaking 101, because you can say a lot of things, but what it boils down to is a complete stimulus overload and a complete disconnect between your brain and your mouth. I was VOD reviewing last night with one of the producers who I absolutely love, and he was helping me with those crutch words because as I say them, at least for me, I recognize their crutch words, but it's simply because, at least in my instance, I don't know what else to say, because there's only so much you can really say in some situations, and no matter how much you improve on it, it's still always going to be there and persistent to one level or another. And so, what you can really do is just try to find the right groove and chemistry, not only with your co-caster, but with also the environment of your cast, the match itself, and what you think you can say, and maybe skip a beat and not say anything. Just have like a full half second of silence to be that word for you and help build up tension, because it's dynamic. It's not a static thing. You can say crutch words are bad, and it's true, but trying to fix them is not an easy solution. In fact, it's an impossible solution. Now, I'm sorry, but Tango brought up a really good point. And how do you find people that do VOD reviews? So how do you find a job, right? I mean, you can find applications on websites, newspapers, on the street, talking to people. It's pretty much the same exact concept. You're pretty much either cold calling people or you network and find connections, because your grandmother's not going to give you a job, right? For the most part, but she's also not going to VOD review for you. It's a great way of showing off your best work and having people that are better and smarter than you just tell you what you're doing wrong, and then you can go back and be, look how much I improved. And eventually that can turn into a gig opportunity, a career opportunity. It can turn into a whole lot of things, but you have to be willing to take constructive criticism and take whatever feedback you can, whether it's good feedback, bad feedback, or even non-constructive feedback. You got to take whatever you can, man, because we're all struggling.
Yeah, and even then, it doesn't even have to be someone better than you, right? Like you were talking about what the producer that you were VOD reviewing. Was it Crater?
Yeah.
He's not he is adamant about not casting. Like I always talk to him, I was like, bro, like just fake cast with me, dude. Like it'll be so fun because I love Crater. I love his person. I love him. But he refuses to because he thinks he sucks. Like, but him being a producer and just being involved with the broadcast, like that brings so much to the table in a VOD review, or even just taking someone who's a fan of the scene, like anyone, because then you get their opinion, not, almost like as an outside perspective, as a viewer, and they can tell you what they like or don't like. And sometimes that can even be, hearing from your audience could be just as valuable or even more so than hearing from someone from, within the circle.
Well, that's the secret, though. You can't just get your VOD reviews from one person. You can hit up Intero, Kix, or any commentator from any community that you're in, because I'm assuming this podcast or this panel is going to be beyond just Siege itself. If you want to go and ask them for help, by all means do that, but there's only so much they're going to tell you. They're the best of the best in their field, but you got to listen to the general audience. You got to listen to the players. You got to listen to the coaches, the analysts, grandma, all those people, because everyone's in this world is going to give you a unique experience of anything that you do or any art form that you have. Someone's not going to like it, and it might be for the most ridiculous reasons, but you have to consider it if you want to be the best that you can be.
Yeah, it comes down to trying to diversify the different, like, the aspects of that cast. Sure, like if casters only talk to casters about casting, then we would just have 50 million Kickstars and Taros. I don't think that would be a bad thing personally. I think it'd be, but when you break it down to the audience perspective, maybe there's just different styles that people like. When you have your production team and your observers that you're sitting in the call with that have just viewed a whole different amount of casters, different levels. Like I know Ocho has given me some feedback as well. Big shout out to him over at ESA. It's like he's pretty much every single caster that's gone through ESA has also talked with Ocho. It's like having different avenues, talking to producers, talking to observers, talking to other casters, as well as even people in the scene that like and really enjoy watching broadcasts and also view a good amount. They know what they like. And as a general, at the end of the day, the core principle of casting is putting on a show for the audience. It's making it so you're adding to the gameplay to a point where you can not only elevate it and make it more fun to watch, but you're also simplifying it down and allowing core ideas that not everybody knows about to be sort of brought down to a level that anybody can understand, but not dumbing it down too much so it sounds stupid. It's finding that nice balance, like walking the fine line between that different things.
Yeah, that's one of the struggles that like what was it? Like we used to say, one of my friends used to say when back in like the old like under ESL, when you had Kixen and Taro and you had Milosh and Emzo, Milosh and Emzo would be like Milosh is like hard shoutcaster, Emzo's hard analyst, and the way Emzo would break things down was for a more experienced viewer. And with Kixen and Taro, they're both really flexible. You know, obviously Kix is kind of, you know, a better analyst because he comes from the pro scene, but they would be able to dumb things down more to like if someone's new to the scene. Because I remember, you know, back when Kix started way back, he would talk about everything like he's talking to other pros. So it's really hard to understand. So it's kind of like you got to find that balance because I know that's been a struggle for me because I'm used to my audience, like when I started out, being other T3 players. So I would be casting the players, so I wouldn't need to see. I'd be like, you know, oh, they're doing a 2-3 split on border, or they're doing an SSG roam. And I wouldn't explain further because everyone in chat would be like, okay, yeah, I know what that is. But now that I've started to expand my audience, I have to like bring myself back down to earth. And it's been kind of hard because I feel like there's so much more that I could be saying about the rounds or about the game instead of explaining this one little part. And like there's more in-depth stuff I want to say, but I realize, you know, the casual viewer like doesn't really care about that. Like the casual viewer doesn't care about, you know, like let's say the Wamai threw his disc, you know, 3 meters to the left so it didn't catch the stun that killed his Goyo or something, you know, some stupid thing like that. So I have to avoid that. So that's been a real struggle. That's why when, you know, one of my favorite bits is, I think I'm pretty sure I did it with you, Keg, is when I talk about why teams bring Ying.
No.
Well, you know, teams bring Ying. So why do you lose rounds, Keg? What happens when you lose a round?
You go to the next round, bro.
No, like how does that happen?
How does that happen? Well, I mean, you don't plant that diffuser, you don't get all the kills. There's 2 teams left alive.
Because your whole team dies, right? Now, when your team dies, that's because the enemy killed you. Now, in order for the enemy to kill you, they have to be able to see, right? You see where I'm going with this?
Yes, I see where you're seeing. Yeah.
They have to be able to see. Now, with Ying, you take Ying. Because what she does, she says, no, you can no longer see. And then bam, you stop losing rounds.
Yeah,
See?
but I think that's an interesting point because we don't really see Ying being brought too much anymore. Like when Theme Park first came out, I think you had a very valid point. But since then, even in that short amount of time, we've seen a small kind of micro meta shift where she's not brought as much because people maybe they put on glasses. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe or you know, right? If you want to see, you bring Warden.
Oh man. You would get along great with my friend Taco, who was one of the only Warden mains I've ever met in my entire life.
If they're bringing a Warden, but you can't see the Warden because you're like through smokes or whatever, take IQ because she can see the Warden's glasses, right?
Very true, yeah.
That's how Siege works. That's how you win the game.
So can I become Plat 2 like you now?
You can.
Oh man.
I hope you could see the pain on me and Loaf's face during that entire interaction. Like that was actual pure. You can still see it on her face. She's struggling.
I want to touch. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
This is like this is what happens after about 11:45 on an ESA cast. This is when Crow's brain shuts off, and it's only 7:30.
I wanted to touch
Yeah.
upon really quick. When we mentioned before about who are the best people to VOD review, and this is kind of just a general life advice. And for me, I'm a pretty anxious person. So originally, when I wanted to go out and kind of seek these, higher up people out for VOD reviews, I'd always be afraid that they would like, curse me out on social media and stuff and like make me look like a really stupid person. That's not going to happen. I've actually had that happen with a really popular Siege YouTuber a long time ago, like 2 years ago, and I haven't forgotten about it. But the chances of that happening are probably close to having lightning strike. But you just need to put yourself out there. You need to become um, not eccentric. I'm sorry, extrovert. You need to be an extroverted person when it comes to this whole career field, and that's going to really benefit you a lot. Just putting yourself out there for a lot of these things to get either to our level or even beyond our level.
Yeah, and I guess I want to go and drive the discussion further away from that. I think we've touched on those specifics for quite a bit. I guess we could go more towards the hardware side of like we can start talking audio principles and stuff like that. Like what kind of mics do you need? What kind of software do you expect to run during a cast? We can touch on those kind of things. So I guess Keg, you can go ahead and start it because your mic looks pretty nice right now.
Yeah, I would say this is pretty much the best you can get at this point. I obviously didn't start out with a Shure SM7B. I think when I started off, I just start off on your basic Blue Yeti microphone, and there's a lot of technical nitty gritty details with it. Yeah, there it is. That's the blackout
Yeah.
edition.
Yeah,
But
Crow and I both use that.
I don't like the Blue Yeti, and there's a lot of reasons. I don't know how in depth I'm supposed to get here. I don't want to bore the audience too much, but what it comes down to it is that you should always try to go for the next big thing, especially, if it's needed. USB microphones suck. They really suck. I used to work in selling microphones, and I can tell you they're awful. They're really, really bad. They're convenient, as very convenient, but it's not worth it. It's really not.
I also kind of want to touch on that as well, is that starting out, kind of want to give perspective to what Keg is saying. You don't need an XLR setup. You absolutely do not need an XLR setup
Yeah, you could use a tin can.
because straight up, I mean, I've used this USB setup for 6 months now, I think at this point, and it's been perfectly fine for the casting that I've been doing. Now, if I were to continue trying to grow and do things that were further above what I'm doing, I would maybe look into upgrading to an XLR setup. But if you're just getting started and you are just kind of doing it as a hobby, and you're just kind of, if you're doing it just as a one-off, use whatever you have and you use for basic like Discord chat or whatever. That's going to be perfectly fine. But if you're going to be doing it on a more frequent basis, just get yourself a halfway decent USB microphone. A Blue Yeti is going to be perfectly fine. That's what Crow and I have been using for a while, and it's not the greatest by any stretch, but it's a cheap option. It's easy to set up, and it gives you better quality than most headset microphones.
Yeah, I spent more on my headphones than I did on my mic.
Yeah, I mean, same here.
Other than the audio itself, like the hardware inside of this microphone or the mixer I have in front of me, what I really think it comes down to is just you have options. It gives you more options. If your Blue Yeti is not great for your room, there's really nothing you can do. There's no amount of drivers or YouTube fixes in the world that's going to make that Blue Yeti better. But let's say your microphone here starts acting a little too loud. You can lower the gain. You can turn down the peaks. Whatever you got to do to make yourself not have to spend any more money. It's kind of like an investment of you spend a lot of money now or at some point, and then you don't have to later on. This will last me the whole rest of my life, probably.
Yeah.
That's true.
I also have the USB path, but I don't have the full Blue Yeti such as Crow and Loaf. I have I believe it's a Fifine K669. This thing was $30.
Yeah,
I don't think it
heard of
sounds. Yeah, it's,
but the
it's
good thing
$30,
about
but it works.
Yeah, it works. That's what matters most.
Yeah, the XLR setup as well. I've been looking into upgrading recently because I've been doing this on a very regular basis. It's also not that expensive. You don't have to go the route of a Shure SM7B because that is for most cases, gotta admit, it's kind of overkill. It's $700, and for probably about, I think I was looking at
It's
like
not 700.
The mic itself is 400, right?
Oh,
Like,
it's 400 now. I think the price has gone down since I
you still
looked
need a
at it.
mixer and a preamp and stuff like
It's
that.
Yeah.
on
Yeah,
Shrew's website.
it's gone down since I looked at it. I was looking at something that was way overpriced, I guess. But like an AT 2020, a Scarlet 2i2, and just like a decent arm and cable, and run you probably about like $250. Well, and yeah, that's really expensive, but compared to some other setups, it's probably some of the cheapest stuff that you can get. And it gives you a lot better quality than a USB mic. Gives you more options, like Keg said as well. But again, it's not the end all be all of things. Again, USB is good if you're doing it more than just kind of a one off thing. But if you start doing it as a more regular thing, look at investing in an XLR setup, because then it becomes a lot more modular and you can upgrade individual parts and pieces. Whereas the Blue Yeti, this is all I have. I can't change out the preamp in this, or I can't upgrade anything with this. I just either have the Blue Yeti or I have nothing. That's pretty much it.
You can change. You can go from omnidirectional to
Cardioid.
cardio.
The different patterns kind of make a difference, but it's still a Blue Yeti through and through.
Your best friend's going to be eBay. I don't think I spent over $200 for all of what I have.
Off of eBay?
Oh yeah, all eBay.
Sick.
Really?
Very cheap. Very cheap.
I'm very paranoid, so I don't know if I could do eBay.
Well, what is the eBay gonna do? Is there like a mosquito or something inside the microphone?
Hey,
No.
haven't you seen the thing where like someone was selling like an iPhone and they just sent them like the box?
Well, no, but there's seller protection now stuff too.
Oh, right.
So if anything, it's more likely the sellers on eBay get scammed than the buyer.
Oh,
Yeah.
sick. I can scam the seller? Hell yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess we can also talk about. I'm sure all of us here have 2 monitors at least, correct?
No.
Oh yeah.
Crow does
You
not
only
have
have-
2 monitors. Crow only has
really?
one.
Actually, the light that's coming from me is a blank Google Chrome tab. I don't have a light.
Yeah, that is what Crow uses for his lighting, and that is something I've also railed him about as well. But so talking about 2 monitors, it is not. It's another thing that is nice to have, but it is not absolutely necessary in my opinion. You don't give maybe the full picture as far as what the game looks like. You can't have the Discord or whatever program you're using up, as well as a stat sheet or something else. You can have them all up, but you may not be able to see the full picture. With 2 monitors, what that allows me to do is I can dedicate one screen right here to just the game. And then I can have open over here. I can have whatever else open. I can have a stat sheet open. I can then have Discord open so that I can talk with my producer, and then I can have whatever else open. It just allows you to it allows more flexibility. I would say it's not necessarily necessary, but it's a very nice thing to have. And I think that comes in general. It's not necessarily just for casting. When working from a computer from a long period of time, 2 monitors is something that just makes everything a lot more convenient. It makes certain things easier and allows for maybe a little bit more productivity.
It does
Yeah, you
allow.
don't-
Oh, my bad.
You can go.
It does allow for productivity, but I can tell you right now, when you're at a LAN casting, you're not gonna have 2 monitors, so you have to get used really quick to just using one screen and whatever note-taking device you want to use. But I mean, yeah, again, convenience. You have Spotify open on one monitor and then have your Discord open on the other one, and then you have your game in the middle monitor. You can do whatever you want.
What, you cast?
No.
Oh.
I can't focus that much.
I thought you were gonna say WoW casting, bro. Open up Spotify. No, I have to deal with one. I mean, my one monitor is a 27-inch, so it's not bad. I can use like the Windows Snap and just like have windows just scattered across my screen. Which works for me, as all my note taking is handwritten anyway, so it's not a huge problem. Also, I would get a second monitor. I have literally no room on my desk, so
Yeah, you got a good desk too.
yeah.
Yeah,
that's
just
one of
in
those
general.
things that you're investing in if you're going to be sitting at your desk
Yeah.
for a significant amount of time.
And a chair.
And a
Yeah.
nice chair is always a big thing.
I'm sitting in a wooden chair.
Yeah, like my desk is like a college dorm desk, or like the desk is like under the bed. I don't know why my parents bought that for me. I kind of hate them for it. Like that's the one thing I'll bring up. I'll be like, "You bought me a stupid desk."
Oh, you sure showed them.
Yeah. See?
Yes, we've actually got another question rolling in. What should be the main priority upgrade when moving up the tiers in casting? So, like, what would you put your money in first if you have to?
First thing is, so if you're I'm going to assume that you're starting out base, nothing. You've got a single monitor, keyboard, mouse, and headset that has a mic built in. That's what I'm going to assume starting out. First thing you want, separate mic from your headset. That's just one of the first things you want to get. Like a USB mic or something is probably the first one that you would want to get. That's one of the best things because you want to make sure that there is no issues with hearing. The sound quality is good for the people on stream and for the people that you're casting for. Next thing I would go for personally, next thing I would go for is second monitor. Because again, it's not necessary, but it is nice, and it is something that can it allows for a lot more flexibility, and you can do a lot more with it. Then after that, I would probably say I'd say after that, probably then look at an XLR setup. And face cams is a completely separate thing, because not everyone requires it. But if you are required to have a face cam, just get a base like Logitech C920. It's like $60. It does the job right. And so long as you've got decent room lighting, you don't really need anything else. I've got just like a $20 key light I got off of Amazon to supplement my room lighting, which helps. And I mean, hey, worst comes to worst, you can just do what Crow does, have a blank Google Chrome tab open, and that, I mean, you see he's actually lit up pretty well despite not really having anything.
If I full screen Discord, this happens.
Yeah, and I mean,
there we go.
You can find creative ways to make it work, if nothing else, when it comes to a webcam, because again, not everyone requires it. The priority, especially for online stuff, is going to be your voice rather than the video, because for the most part, you're going to be in game and the people aren't going to see you.
Loaf actually Loaf bought me mine.
Yeah, I bought him his webcam because they were requiring it for ESA, and he was like, I'll buy it when I get back from Florida. I was like, they need it tomorrow. And it wasn't tomorrow, it was like 3 or 4 days, and I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna buy you a webcam so that you actually have something and you're not getting kicked out of ESA.
Yeah, fair enough. I would also upgrade your internet too. So just so like halfway through you don't get cut out or anything.
I'm still flying on 25 megabits a second.
It's not terrible.
That's pretty.
It's on the cusp of being really bad. Yeah. If it was 24, that'd be a different story. But you're at 25. You're chilling.
Yeah.
Yeah, the main thing is stability with internet and such like that. Because essentially, I guess if we want to start looking in behind the scenes of casting, like what actually happens, so like what's the unseen stuff, as well as how we prep for a match. Like the main thing would be you're gonna probably either go into, if you're just starting out, you're probably not going to be using vMix. You're going to be in a Discord call using Parsec.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to talk about any experiences with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think I can probably talk about probably going to be something that you will need to get very familiar with, especially if you're getting into the tier 3 scene, because it's used pretty much constantly, is Parsec. It is a godsend.
Yeah.
I don't know who created Parsec, but whoever did, thank you.
Parsec?
It is, Team Parsec. But what it is basically is a program that allows you to remote into any computer and just see what's going on their screen. You can focus in on games and whatever. It's sort of like a Discord live stream, but through a dedicated service that's completely free. It is way better than Discord Live as well. I know we use it all the time for clean feeds and stuff, just so that we can see what's going on in the game in real time, and our casting is completely synced up. You'll see sometimes people will use YouTube clean feeds, and that also depends on the kind of setup that you're using with the production side of things, because you'll see you may have a dedicated producer and a dedicated observer, and they're not the same person.
Hopefully.
It's still quite prominent in the tier 3 scene, where you'll have the producer and the broadcaster are the same person.
That's how ESA does it.
That's how a lot of that's how CEA does it.
That's how a lot of different groups do it, and there's nothing wrong with it. Honestly, it has some advantages, but it still can. I don't know. What?
I hard disagree with that.
Dude.
If you could separate the roles of just about anything you can to dedicated people, you need to.
Oh no, I absolutely agree with that. Again, I think it has some advantages when it comes to you've got your producer in here, but you can also talk to the observer and say, hey, go look at this thing. Because I know Crow and I have done this, or we've hinted at it in our casting and they've been able to switch over to it immediately. And
Carpe, can we look at this? And he'll switch over.
Yep.
Yeah, or we've been like talking about a player and then they'll switch over to that player. And I mean things like that have been helpful, but you're right. Being able to split up those roles eventually can help because it allows for the producer to focus solely on producing and the observer to focus solely on observing, and you can get better quality things from that. They don't have to worry about so much at once. So another question we just got, which I actually think is kind of right along the same lines, is how do you deal with a bad observer, or how do you get the observer on the same frequency and mindset as you? How do you build that synergy? You got to talk with the observer beforehand. You have to talk to them, and you have to say what you generally like to do. There are some groups that will have a standard set for what their broadcasters should do. I know groups like CRSL have done that. ESA does that. I think EPS does it as well. I can't remember off the top of my head if they have like a set standard for it. But various groups will have, this is the way we want you to observe, and this is the only way you should observe. But there are times if you don't have an observer that follows that, where they aren't being told to observe a certain way, then talk with them. Tell them what you like to see is like, okay, I want to see the scoreboard at the beginning at the end of the round, or I want you to stay in third person for the entire prep phase, or things like that. And if you end up getting someone who is a bad observer, has a hard time following the action, don't worry about it too much. Try to focus on what's going on screen. And if there's action happening, talk about that action and try to, if the observer can hear what you're talking about, try to hint towards that. Try to nudge them in the right direction through your casting. Don't just stop everything and say, hey, go look at this, because that brings it back to the cardinal sin of casting of you're breaking up the flow of the cast.
It really goes both ways. It's funny, the person who gives us all these questions kind of live pointed this one towards me, and I guess I should explain my credentials a little bit. I don't want to say I'm one of the best North American observers for Siege. That seems really egotistical of me, but I was considered for that Pro League spot to move out to Vegas to observe for the new season, but I still have school, so I couldn't do it. Pretty much it really goes both ways. To an extent, the observer's the third caster because they're telling their own story. You need to focus on a lot of things. You need to have a lot of in-game knowledge. You need to be able to have a really good sense of rhythm as well when it comes to observing. And not only do you have to listen to what the casters say, but you also need to take the lead a little bit too as an observer, because you're literally the entire skeleton of the show. Everything else can go on to some extent, but not without an observer. You're the one that gives the show. And so, if you're showing something that you know is really important and will actually dictate how a match will go, the observer, you don't listen to the casters. The casters listen to what you are presenting to the screen, and that is just as important. So, I mean, I think a lot of people kind of really underestimate the observers, and overall, people think that they're kind of not almost inferior, but taken granted for, or taken, not advantage of, but they're taken for granted a lot. And I mean, really, they're just as important as Kixon and Taro and stuff. And I'm glad they're really starting now to get their own names.
Yeah, if you think about kind of like as a movie set, the observer is both like the screenplay writer and the director, because it's up to them to, again, like you said, without them, we don't see anything. Like if we had just casters, like what are we gonna cast over? We need that person. And every so often the casters would be like, hey, this is how the defense is setting. Like, you know how like let's say Kicks and Intero would be like, oh, you know, there's this specific wall that's really important to the setup, and then the observer would kind of highlight it. That's kind of like the very few times where the caster would be like, hey, observer, you know, hey, come look at this. But for the most part, the observer is telling us what to cast or how to cast it. So
I've heard a lot of people say that it's really easy to spot a bad observer for FPS games. I honestly don't really agree with that. Maybe I'm just so kind of indoctrinated into what I should do myself that like it's burned into my brain and I visually cannot imagine it going any other way. But I've casted a lot with, you know, people who like 5 minutes before we start goes, "Oh yeah, this is my first time ever observing." And I'm going in my brain, okay,
Uh-oh.
okay. And honest, it's really not that bad, all things considered. I mean, for the most part, everyone has that inner kind of ticking mechanism of what rhythm should be, and that's really good. That's pretty much the most of what you need. It's just a matter of getting that raw mechanical skill and game knowledge to see those little tiny micro strategies that go out and have the caster help highlight that as well.
yeah.
So our question person wants to ask where we can see these great observers. Honestly, a lot of the T3 and above leagues have decent observers.
Hi.
Ty's good. Ty and I are pretty much equal when it comes to it. Sino is the North American observer, and he's really great as well. Pretty much you won't have to focus and really worry about the observer anywhere from a semi-professional league like T3 is enough. Which, again, I guess plays into why they're kind of taken for granted because you don't really think about them because you're just overstimulated by what you see on the screen. But honestly, yeah, myself, Sino, and Ty are probably the top 3 in America.
I say you guys and Carpe. Carpe
And
is
Carpe,
I
yeah.
throw Carpe
And
in there as well.
Carpe.
Carpe is one.
I know Carpe is a producer. That's what I think of.
Carpe's kind of moved into a more producer role, but for ESA, I think he still does observing. And Carpe,
Yeah, and for CEA as well.
Carpe almost like perfectly mirrors Medics' style. Because I know Carpe actually told me he sat down, he studied Medics, how he observed, and try to reflect that. So Carpe is a really reliable observer. He does ESA. There's actually for EPS has been using one of the staff members, Bubs, was like when they brought me on for the relaunch of EPS, they were like, all right, you're the first customer we want to work with. Here's Bubs. We don't have a dedicated observer yet. And Bubs was like, and I was like, oh, Bubs, you know, have you observed before? And he was like, no, this is my first time. And I was like,
Yep.
He's still been doing pretty decently despite.
nervous, but like, especially for his first ever like observing gig, he was actually doing really well.
Mhm.
Like he was catching, like it was one of those rare moments where for somehow he was catching like all the important action. We saw nearly every multi-kill on stream.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, you got to keep in mind too that there's a huge difference between like the T3 scene and Pro League because having observed like, you know, Space Station Gaming and Tempo Storm and all those people, it's a very different ball game because you may know the game really well, but sometimes you don't catch things that are pivotal to the round that you don't realize normally is extremely important. And even then, sometimes the action is so high octane, it is almost physically impossible to keep up with it.
Yeah.
With that being said, though, oh my god, I completely blanked. But with that being said, yeah, observing is just a really kind of almost a niche area that's really important. It is just a huge crutch to what makes a production so good.
I think too, something that a lot of people don't realize about observers, but not only are observers integral to the production side, but observers are also integral to the teams. Without the observers, there's no VOD review. A lot of times, observers dictate what parts of the strategies of each team are. So you know, sometimes observers are even taken for granted by the players themselves and coaches and stuff, because without them, you know, it's the players and the coaches rely on the observers to show, you know, the strategies in their completion.
Very true.
Yeah, I guess you could almost compare it to like if we want a traditional like sports reference, and observers like I almost think of them as like a lineman with like it's less glorious, but it's definitely necessary. Everybody when they think of I want to get into esports production, I want to be a caster, I want to say hype plays, I want to do all this. but you need just as many observers, and having good observers is something that's so crucial to the entire scene at every level. Like, yeah, like VOD review. No observers, no good VODs. You can't get better. You can't correctly analyze what your mistakes have been, as well as being able to possibly capitalize on the mistakes that other teams are making. You
At
can't
least,
have any production. You can't have any casters talking over the gameplay if there's not good observers. And just that whole idea of it's like not necessarily it's not a glorious position, but it is so necessary and integral. And I wish that there was a way for us to like properly like, I know with ESA, they've started with the face cams. There's the 2 casters as well as the production. That's sort of bringing into light and showing. I know when Ocho does it, he has a little side cam. You see, like, his 3 monitors, his stream deck, him, like, on his controller and doing, like, 50 million things at the same time, showing that it is actually very difficult to do. And it's just as hard, probably harder than casting because you have to do a lot more predictive work in order to correctly read, "Okay, they're pushing on this side of the map. That means in probably 5 seconds, this person's gonna die. He's gonna be traded by this, then switch over to this person. Then that means all of this wall can be open and they're gonna flood into sight. And like correctly predicting the action, it's not necessarily as an observer, you can't be reactionary. It's almost all prediction.
Yeah, absolutely.
well, actually, I just realized the point about observers being integral to teams VOD reviewing. They are until we get our replay system. UV. We want those match replays. I think another.
Yeah, but who's going to give you the replays? The observer.
Wait,
Well,
no.
if it's like the CS:GO demo system.
Yeah, what they're planning on doing.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Like, remember Black Ops 2 theater mode? It'll be like, it'll be like that. I think too, another question that we glossed over that I am very connected to is someone said stats wise and notes wise, what should you prioritize during a match? Now let me
I still don't know.
well, let me give you a demonstration.
While Crow's getting his notes, I'll sort of pop in here as well.
Every
Crow is an extreme example. That's all I'm going to say. Crow is a very extreme example. I think when it comes down to what you should talk about or what you should prioritize stats wise is I think you need to look at sites. Probably entry is one of the more important things you need to look at. Sort of the flow of the rounds as well. Sort of see how they went up 2-1 and then they lose 5 rounds in a row. I mean, you can sort of start to see that momentum building. Talking about how they're winning their rounds. Are they just outgunning these people, or are they getting a plant down and just preventing them from counter defusing? Are they playing for post plant? Or are they playing just to kill? There's a lot of things that go into looking at stats, but I think notes wise, I think what you want to do is you really just want to hit the high points of the round. If there was a 4K, if there was some sort of multi-kill, if there was some clutch or something else, I would say note if there's a plant, note who won the round, what side it was on, the round differential, and if you have time as well, if you can think of it, entry as well. I think those are probably the 7 most important things as a caster to take notes about. I feel like if you've got someone who's just doing like analytics, which I know there are a couple leagues that do that, they go a lot more in depth with like op picks, map picks, site picks, a lot of other stuff as well. But I think as a caster, those 7 things are probably the more important things you need to focus on.
Yeah. So as as a caster, that like Love said, I'm a bit of an extreme example, but that's because Siege is such a nuanced game, and there's so many different factors, different like a lot of people like. A lot of times our job as casters is to point out the big picture, but in my notes, I'll take down every little contributing factor. So like Loaf said, bomb site, who wins the round, I record every round, who gets the opening pick and who was the opening death. I record how many players are left alive for the winning team in each round, because that gives me a better idea of how dominant the rounds have been. Like let's say it's a 3-3 scoreline, but Team A has had 3 to 4 people alive at the end of every round, whereas Team B, it's all come down to 1v1. So that gives you a good idea of, yes, the score line is even, but Team A has been still taking the rounds a little more dominantly, and they've been coming really, really close for Team B. I also take down, like Bo said, any multi-kills, 3Ks and up. If it's, 1v3, 2v4, 3v5, stuff like that. Any really influential flanks, who gets the plant down, and usually at what time the plant was down, like if it was past 000, if it was like, a plant, a minute and a half in the round at 5v5, that's definitely something notable to record. If there's off picks, like let's say someone's bringing a Ying or they're bringing like a Clash or something like that, and where the Clash was playing, how she affected the round.
I just want to reiterate, Crow is a very extreme example.
If someone throws, like
You need
there
to be like, here, Crow's all the way up.
there was a round where I think it was Thunder Logic versus Rose. Two players are holding a crossfire on the bakery double door, and then Maestro swings out from the cross and it causes them to lose the round. Like I'll be like, okay, Maestro threw. So stuff like that. I try to take down as much as humanly possible in, the 10, 15 seconds I have to write stuff down.
What's important is that you need to be able to reiterate what happened during that round so that you go back into your notes and knew exactly what happened then. You don't need to write down everything. You need to let your brain do some of that work too. It helps with the retention factor. But when it comes down to it, they're both completely right. You should be able to take down whatever you find is noteworthy and be able to use it coming back up for either analysis or even future casts.
Yeah, and building off of with the future cast, if you're doing something consistent such as a league, I know like specifically with ESA, how they want to do things currently is that there's rivals, contenders, and champion series. They want to keep the casters consistently between the play days. So such as me and Slayzilla are on contender. So we cast all the contender games. So we're actually familiar with the teams and are able to sort of offer more insight into the different play styles and how things are going to build. That's what you see with things like Pro League, like all the way if you want to go to the top. If you're at the top of it and okay, G2 plays this map like this, going up against BDS who plays it like this, that means that their play styles are going to cancel each other out, or you can offer that sort of prediction as well. And being able to sort of build, like you said, with things from previous like performances on specific maps or specific sites. Maybe if we think about Cafe, for instance, maybe there's a team that isn't good at defending Kitchen, but they're absolutely insane at defending both of the second floor sites. So they don't even go to Kitchen and they never go to Kitchen. You being able to know that and talk about, hey, this is why they are in Train Room as a site as opposed to the traditional secondary site of Kitchen, being able to offer that idea and that little bit of insight to the rest of the audience is something that's nice and nuanced and can help sort of build the audience and build a community around any sort of sets of teams with their fan base in specifics.
And it's important to say like why. Like let's say they're really good at holding mining because they have let's say a really good crossfire setup from dining and pillars or something like that, or they can't hold kitchen because their roam in the second floor is really inefficient. Like stuff like that is also stuff you take down. Something we glossed over that I think is a given: operator bans, obviously.
Mhm.
And what team? I feel like it's not. It's a little bit important, but it glossed over. What team bans what, and who got the first ban?
Yeah.
Let's say Team A, like let's say like G2, right? G2 during season, what was it, season 7? Like 100% banned Lion across the board, right? Nearly every single game. But if another team bans Lion first, then G2 is like, oh, okay. We have a free one. So I feel like that's a little important to take down. And something else, if you can, map bans. Taking down what teams ban what maps can really help you in later pre-shows. Because, right, a lot of times you have like 5 to 10 minutes before the actual game starts to talk things out. And the more notes you have, the more stuff you have to talk about, the less awkward it seems. And it can also give you sometimes a good idea of how teams play. Like, let's say a team ban, like, let's say it's a best of 3, and a team bans Coastline and Consulate, but picks Theme Park. That gives you really like they hate the really fragger heavy maps. Maybe they're not as confident in their gun skill against this specific team, or if it's repeated, maybe they just really like the strat heavy maps more. So stuff like that. I feel like like Creator said in chat, even if you don't think it's that important, it can always just the more notes you can take in an efficient amount of time, the better your analysis will be.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. You just gotta find your own groove after a while too. Eventually your niche and what to talk about, and just be able to fill in that role that you can and be the best that you can be doing it. And that's really all you can do at that point.
I think step number one is just find a system. If your notes are disorganized and you can't even read them, then they're useless. You got to really find what works for you. So
Yeah.
I guess this could be a really good segue onto specifically the different kinds of castings, as you were like talking about analysis versus either color commentary or shoutcasting. I know each of us in specific do a very different way of casting, and that's why variety is key. So if you guys each wanted to go in what you necessarily feel like your strengths are in the casting scene and what you specifically like to do when you're in game.
I mean, I can go first. I love going
Yeah.
first.
Go, Keg.
I mean, my casting's evolved a lot over time. Like, when I casted in FGC games, it would pretty much just be like knowing every single move, the name of it, and just saying over and over again what it would be. Or a better example would be now first person shooters. I would list out the entire kill feed really quickly. And where's the substance in that, right? There's
Yeah.
nothing there. You got to be able to have that controlled hype too. You need to feel what the audience feels. You're the maestro of that situation. If I'm making it tense, you know it's going to be tense. If it's going to be a dire situation where there's stakes on the line, you have to convey that to your audience. You need to know how. But if you're analysis, you don't have to worry about that as much, but you got to be able to tell us part of that story about why that color commentator, that play-by-play, why that's important. You need to back them up. Even though you're equals, you need to be able to play off of each other and use those statistics and use that tension building that both people need to bring together to tell a story the viewer's going to go home and remember.
yeah, I feel like it kind of depends on your groove with your duo. I feel like it's important to be at least competent in both color casting and shoutcasting.
Mhm.
But I feel like I started as more analysis just because I wasn't confident in shoutcasting. Like I would fumble over my words. I would, not be able to keep up the pace. But like you said, once I figured out that, you don't need to tell the whole kill feed. You can just be like, oh, trades go back and forth, and as the dust settles, we're out in a 3 versus 2 or something like that. Like, you don't need to say like, oh, this guy killed this guy, and this guy killed this guy, and this guy killed this guy. Like, you don't. A lot of people do that because they feel like they need to, but the viewers can see the kill feed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
You got to explain why it's impactful. Because, like, who cares if Lion kills Mira, right? I don't care. They're just characters. They were programmed by some guy that gets underpaid. I want to tell you why this player behind the keyboard takes this person down and why that's going to affect their career going forward in Siege.
yeah, and another thing too is don't be afraid to, like, let's say you're in the beginning of the round, or let's say you're talking about the opening pick, right? Like, let's say there's a Valk and a Pulse on the defensive side, and their Jaeger spawn peaked IQ. Like, that's huge, right? Because IQ's the big counter. She can see Pulse through the floor. She can get that, pistol bangs through the floor, at least call out, watch out, don't stand still, there's a Pulse. Spot out the Valk cams, outside, whatever. And as you're explaining the importance of that kill, don't be afraid to, like, keep talking, even though, maybe there's a refrag. Like, maybe the Jaeger spawn peaks IQ, and then 15 seconds later gets refragged. If you're still talking about the IQ, like, keep finishing that thought. Like, don't interrupt yourself just to say,
I do that, yeah.
Jaeger dies, by the way, and then keep going. Like, that's just kind of
I
odd.
have a
Like, it doesn't matter. It took me a long time to just, like, stop calling out everything in the kill feed.
I can say I've been guilty of that as well, and I've shifted more and more over towards that. You want to be building that sort of story arc that Keg was talking about. You want to talk about. Let me stop for a second. You want to build a narrative around the game. That's mainly what a caster is talking about. You were talking about You've got the like the director and the screenwriter and all this. I mean, you are essentially writing the script of the game as it happens. You are the one who's telling the story. You're the one who's taking what's given to you and crafting that into this story and this excitement. And you use the analytical side of things to talk about. I would say sort of give more insight as to what's happening in the round, but
You're adding to the lore.
Yeah, you add that, you use that to bring as to why it's continuing going. Like I can sort of bring an example back to the CRSL playoffs that I was actually casting with Crow. We were doing, it was Utah versus Akron in the last match to determine who would make the Final Four. And
I remember anything about that game.
But what I tried to do during that is I had two simultaneous narratives going on at the same time. I had one going that was the Utah sort of came in as a dark horse during the entire thing. They were, no one expected them to go as far as they did. No one expected them to be the top of their group. And here they are facing up against the Titans, the previous champions that are Akron, and just a powerhouse that have made a dent when it comes to even Challenger League quals, because Akron during the last ESL Challenger League qualifiers actually made it a decent way. But talking about that, and then also talking about how Akron are the returning champions, and they're having to face up against one of their more formidable opponents of Utah, this team that has come out of nowhere looking to dethrone them and take them away from their spot. It's building stories like that, which is one of the most important things of cast. Getting past shoutcasting and analysis. Well, those are the two roles you typically see. The casting as a whole is about telling the story and weaving in, taking the shoutcasting and analysis and using that to build the story. And for example, is talking about, and you can do this to individual players as well, but talking about through the rounds how slowly Akron has started, they've come down really far. I mean, Utah's up 4-2, and you can use it to talk about Akron seems they're losing their steam. They seem a little bit demoralized. This threat is looming over them, and you've seen the last few rounds have been very dominant from Utah, and and that's just digging in. That seems to be digging in on Akron, and there's just different ways that you can do it, and bring in the sort of analytical and shoutcast. You use the hype casting to then bring this to a climax as well, talking about and when it gets towards the end of the final rounds, you can just slowly build your way up. You can get more and more excited, not rattle off the kill feed, but talk about I mean, this is the last chance for Akron to make their final push. This is the last chance for Utah. This is the end of everything for them if they want to continue on in this series. I mean, just finding different ways to do that is, I think really the ultimate purpose of those roles, not just I think not just providing insight into maybe the round or the game as a whole, or trying to appeal it to the larger audience. Well, that is a very good thing that those roles do. I don't think it's really the end all be all of those.
Yeah, it's definitely, and like you were saying, with building up like different narratives and stuff, it also depends on if you're finding your role. It's knowing who you're with as well, and that's why specifically duos are so powerful in esports casting. I know I haven't casted with you in months, Loaf, and I don't
Oh, it's
really
been
count our first.
ages.
I don't even count our first cast as a cast, but I've done a lot with Crow and Keg. I did for the first time on Monday or Tuesday. But like the way one of those. But the way you do different with different people is just entirely different. I know with Keg, his confidence just kind of like let me take a little bit of a step back, and I was definitely more of a supportive casting with him. He was
I don't
doing
like
all
that.
No, I was letting you were shoutcasting and stuff, and then I would break it down. Like, you'd be saying the last 45 seconds, it's a 1v4, and the clock's about to hit 0, and you're like, "Okay, CDAPS, roll with the analysis." He goes, "Yeah, they won this because this, and this, all of this was happening," while you were able to take a break and wait for more action to go. we started off our conversation with those ideas that you sort of tossed to me, and then I built something up and then tossed it back to you to continue. It's just that back and forth is what you need. But at the end of the day, Crow also made a really good point that you need to be comfortable doing both. You can't just be analysis when you might be talking in the middle of the round and then all of a sudden somebody drops a hatch and gets 5 kills. Just gets an ace off the instance. And that's something where I specifically did have trouble as I started casting was I sort of have like a very like relaxed voice and it's hard for me to necessarily put the excitement in and portray the emotions that I'm feeling. But as I've gone on, I think I'm slowly getting better at that, and that's the main feedback I've gotten from other people. But so, like with Keg, I would do more of a supportive role, necessarily like quote unquote supportive. But then when I'm with Crow, me and Crow just both feed off of each other's energy and just keep on going up and up and up and up and up, and it's just everywhere. Yeah.
What's
But
most important is that everyone needs to bleed into each other like some giant anamorphic being that we're all connected at once. Kind of like life itself, how we're all kind of connected. Yeah, you're laughing, but you know I'm right.
oh yeah, definitely.
Like some horrific amalgamation, like writhing limbs everywhere. That's us. That's
Yeah,
us.
it's the end goal, man. It's the
Yeah.
end goal.
Want to become one in the most eldritch way possible. But I feel like like CDAP said, I feel like if you're doing analysis or whatever and stuff happens, it's super awkward. Like if in the middle of a 3K, you stop your analysis and then just stop talking, and the shoutcaster is like, okay, this guy gets 3 kills and then like has to carry on. You got to be confident in both. And if you're the shoutcaster, you got to be confident in analysis. You can't just be standing there, with your thumb in your nose, like, yeah, this guy killed this guy. That's how they won the round, and then throw it off. So I feel like too a big thing that some people do when they first start out is feel the need to fill dead air.
Hmm.
Like they'll just like let's say it's during a clutch, right? Like let's say Bosco is in a 1v3 or whatever, and he gets the first 2 frags quick. So you shoutcast that, you're building the hype, and then they'll just like he'll be hunting for the last one, and there's like nothing happening for 20 seconds, and they just keep going and going and going and going because they don't want to let the hype settle. But what you got to do is, right, Bosco gets the double kill, they line up, whatever, it's down to a 1v1, and then you slow down. Like you let the hype settle, you go, all right, Bosco knows it's now a 1v1. Does he have info on the last guy? They had a Valkyrie on the board. They might have a black eye, but the IQ was in that room earlier, so it could potentially be gone. With Bosco's approach, it does not look like he knows the Jackal is in the corner. He's going to wide swing it, but he turns just in time. And then, as the last kill progresses, that's when you feed off that lax and you bring it back to a climax. It's kind of like you start up, it's like a roller coaster, right? And you go down and you got to build it up again before the climax. So I know something I struggle with like solo casting. It's really hard to stop talking when you're solo casting.
Oh, it's nearly impossible to rein yourself back in.
Well, you don't want dead air. That's another cardinal sin. You don't almost never want dead air. Unless you can put a beat to it.
I actually strongly disagree with that because I feel like silence can be an incredible tool when it comes to casting. I've discussed this with a couple of other casters before as well. Is that using silence to your advantage can be something that is that can be incredibly powerful. Use silence to really drive home the point about something. You talk about is like, oh, this is SSG's last chance to make it in. And you let that sit for just a second or two.
There's a difference.
Use silence to punctuate. I get what you're saying about like dead air though. Like not letting things just kind of sit there for 10, 15 seconds with nothing going on and just kind of letting the round play out. That I can understand. But I think I misheard it, really took it as just silence in general.
Yeah, having a beat is okay. It helps build up tension, like I said earlier, but having just straight up dead air, because you're filling in the role for 2 people, is you're gonna have dead air and it sucks. Because like you watch or listen to a radio station, you're not gonna have dead air. That DJ's always talking, whether you like it or not. And I mean, this is a little bit different of a ball game. Usually they have music to overcompensate it as well, but you don't have music when it comes to casting by yourself. You have the game, and you can't let that flow through it by itself. You got to put something over it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point that Crater just made in chat specifically, is that there's a
Oh, Crater!
gigantic difference between silence, giving yourself breathing room, and having that dead air. Silence can definitely be a tool where you're, like Crow was saying earlier, you get the first 2 kills and there's a little bit of a lull. You can either use that lull as sort of silence to build tension. You can use it as a time to maybe pass off to your other caster if they're comfortable in that position, or just a chance to regain your headspace and make sure that you're going to give the play that's on the screen the justice it deserves. And but necessarily with the breathing room as well, nobody wants to be just always up against the wall talking at 5 million miles per hour for the entire time. You need to be able to have that necessarily building the beat, switching in between having your rhythm and building with your casters, and not necessarily feel super stressed because that will translate into directly how you're communicating to the audience. But when you have dead air, such as just stopping like that, that's an awkward pause. There's not really
Yeah.
anything you can do with that, and it isn't being used as the proper tool that it can be.
But building up that tension towards the very end of a sentence or a round like that, it can make a big difference towards the end of a round because the stakes are high. And you want to know what the next point is going to be after this sentence is over because I'm making you cling on to every word I say. Every single word. It's going to be really important too. But I think that is a great way to wrap up silence.
Yeah, and I guess we can move on to the next point being the specific networking. I think that's probably what a lot of people, if they are trying to get into the casting scene, this will be a very big segment of this Q&A. How to get known, how to get people to notice you, how to get into these leagues, into advantageous positions, and stuff like that. I guess we could talk about specifically what our paths of networking was.
Um, I have never networked.
Uh,
I
I
mean,
think
that's not true.
I think I can
I
start off a little bit.
taken the initiative to network. It's always been like I've never really asked to cast. People have DM'd me, and I've just been like, okay, sure.
But
And
you're taking that opportunity
I've
is
taken
networking.
I've taken every opportunity I could, and I feel like that's why I am where I am. Not because I've made the proper context like myself and went out of my way to be like, I want to make friends or like I want to contact this person so I can stick in their mind for this future opportunity. I've just been going and going and going and going and then steadily, broadening my horizons. And I love you, Creator. I just wanted to say that.
Um, I think for me, I I came from already sort of I started out as an engineering major, so I came from a already very professional background, and my parents as well come from a very professional background as well. So I've grown up really knowing all is like, oh, you have to network, you have to meet new people, you have to talk with people, make those connections. So I think that really came as an importance to me already coming into this. And I've been slowly sort of doing that. I mean, networking. I mean, even through doing the VOD review with Stos, I sort of networked there as well by getting sort of, hey, I'm a caster and I'm looking for feedback, and I've been doing this and this and this, that sort of thing, and just as well, just sort of interacting with as many people in the industry as I can, but not trying to be that sort of push myself into the conversation. I try to look for a good solid opportunity to talk to a person, especially if they're higher than me in the scene, because I generally enjoy listening to the way that they think. Um, there was one time when there was a casting job that was posted on Hitmarker, and Intero like retweeted something about like, hey, if you're looking at this, talk to me about like paid casting jobs. And that was around the time I was kind of starting to looking for asking for pay for some of my cast, because I had pretty much been doing it completely free before. And through that, I was able to talk with Intero, talk with him about some of my casting as well, and sort of make that connection with him. It was really just a lot of it has been right place, right time for me, but a lot of it comes down to if you want to really network, go to events. I know right now in this current climate, that's not really possible with COVID and everything that's going on. But if you have the opportunity and the means, go to the lands, go to the events, because that's where all the people are. That's where a lot of the people that are very prominent in the scene are going to be, and it's a very relaxed atmosphere. It's going to be easy to talk with them and make those connections. Whereas online, it feels like you're just kind of cold calling, and you're just kind of sometimes it feels like you're just kind of throwing yourself at them if you don't make that, like I was saying, the very natural connection sometimes.
I mean, it's important to do whatever you can because not every person can get opportunities just, thrown at them. A lot of it comes to grinding as well and just knowing people, even if they seem like they might not be to an extent valuable to you right away. Every person you know and meet that you come across every single day has some sort of impact in your life. Like way back in my FGC game days, right? Like, so there was a person I knew who was running, some sort of league or org or whatever. And I was friends with him. He's a cool guy. And then he turned into the lead producer for that entire esport. But then he died. But still, it's really important to know all those people and get those connections. And then you meet more people.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I've had some conversations with, such as from people from ESA, is that getting casting experience to a certain extent is somewhat difficult. But I think that's where Collegiate has made a really good carving out their niche in that ecosystem necessarily. Like, such as I started doing CEA, I had no caster experience at all. And that's how a lot of other people have done it as well. And that's why T3 leagues such as Siege Cardinal League, ESA, and stuff like that, they like CR6 and CEA because they give people an opportunity. It's like a proving grounds. It's like, don't be afraid of humble beginnings. Take every opportunity that you can possibly carve out for yourself and try to take some initiative with those sort of things. But there definitely is a gigantic difference of trying to get into casting like from a more traditional means as opposed to being in Intero's 8,000 person Twitch stream and being, hey in chat, hey Intero, please let me cast Intero. Can you look at my VOD? Hey. It's like it could be sort of you're trying to get your foot in the door, but you have to really like grow and understand that a lot of things aren't gonna happen overnight. And that there are tons and tons of people that have really put in so much time and effort behind the scenes to get to the places where they are, and not even all of them are up at the top.
Yeah, I think definitely the biggest point you can take away is if you're gonna try and get into casting, just grind. Take every opportunity that comes to you. Because if you take the more opportunities you take, the more you'll just naturally meet people without having to go out of your way and be like, hey, I'm trying to do this. I would appreciate whatever. You'll just naturally meet people and work with them. And
I
they'll
also kind of want to put a little bit of a warning on that. Don't burn yourself out, because I did that. In my earlier days of casting, I took every single opportunity I could. I think I cast maybe 5 days a week for the first like 3 months of my casting. That is exhausting.
It
It
really is.
it is not very sustainable, and you will burn yourself out quick. Now, I'm not saying don't accept opportunities, but know your limits. But if an opportunity comes your way and you can, and it seems like a decent one as well, then go for it. And that's another thing is I got from just talking to other people as well, is know your worth as a caster as well, and don't just take every single league that comes looking your way for work, because again, it gets to that point where you're just doing stuff that can end up burning you out, and it can just be busy work at that point. It's not, you're not working, you're not really improving yourself, you're just doing it to do it at that point if you do it so much. um which I can admit I got to that point when I was nearly burning myself out. I was just casting to cast. I wasn't really improving myself. I wasn't really taking the time to take a step back and look, okay, how do I change this? But as soon as I stepped back from like 3 of the leagues I was casting, I cut it down to just like 2 that I would be working on. I was able to take a serious step back. I was able to focus. I was able to do other stuff than just cast, but I was also able to take a step back and look at my casting and see, okay, next week, what am I going to do to try to improve this?
Nah, man, you're just a non-grinder.
Oh my God.
You're not the Dan of casting.
Man.
But I
Can't
guess
help
that's
it, man.
also, that could be a very good transitional point to the biggest tips for upcoming casters. As I guess we can, I don't want to sound cocky or anything, like we have a somewhat like carved out a little role in the T3 scene
Yeah,
as well as
I mean,
collegiate. So we have some
just
sort of
cast.
platform to stand on. We can give
Mhm.
some tips as well. If each of you guys
Mhm.
want to run through that.
Biggest
Yeah.
tips, just cast. Just
Dear
cast,
God, don't
man.
talk forever too.
Yeah. I think probably probably the 2 biggest things is 1, actually cast, like Crow said, and 2, find people outside of your bubble of people that you talk to look at your casting. Find someone that will be blunt with you and be very just straight up about what you're doing and will give their honest opinion on it. Because getting criticism like that is going to be one of the only ways that you can truly improve. Because I stayed pretty much the same with my casting until I went to Stokes and a couple, and like I think like the production, one of the production guys at my university's esports club, and a couple of other people that I knew, I sent them my VODs. And until then, I was kind of just doing the same thing with casting. I never really truly improved. After then, though, I was able to, they gave me feedback and I was able to take a step back and look at myself and be like, okay, I am doing these things. I need to make a serious effort to change these things and make myself a better caster. I didn't feel like I got better until I started doing that. And since then, it's been something that I've done constantly. And I've always, if anyone ever comes to me for advice, that's one of the biggest things I tell them is get someone honestly who is not your friend to do it for you if you
Someone
can.
who hates you.
Not someone who hates you, but someone who's just going to be honest with you and isn't going to sugarcoat things. You need someone who will be just straight up with you about that will call you on your BS if you're pulling some BS in your casts.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good point for casting itself too. I feel like one of the reasons why, like, I've kind of been juggled between a bunch of leagues, and then people contact me, and why, you know, I'm on pretty good standing with most of, if not all, the T3 community, is I think an important thing to remember when you're casting is don't be afraid to call people out for having a crappy performance. If you
Professionally.
sugarcoat professionally, yeah,
Professionally,
obviously don't
yes.
be like, man, this dude sucks. Drop him. Like, don't do that, obviously. But you don't want to sugarcoat too much. Like, if a team is throwing, you know, say, you know, these guys are having the advantage in so many rounds and they just can't close it out. They've been throwing them away. They're either making, you know, not great decisions, they're making dumb plays, or they're just straight up, you know, getting too over aggressive, whatever, and call people out for their mistakes. Because I feel like casters who are a little too timid, chat will call you out. Chat will absolutely call you out, especially in T3. Where in T3, the more teams trash talk is kind of like, you can tell. The more teams trash talk to each other in game chat, the closer they are a lot of times. And it's the same thing with casting. The more you highlight, of course, you know, balance it out. The more you highlight both what a team is doing well and what a team or a player is doing poorly, I think that the better standing you'll have with the players themselves.
Yeah, it's sort of like we talked about a little bit earlier, building the sense of community, but you still, as you want to cast, one huge thing is staying impartial. You don't want to quote unquote simp for a team just because you like one of their players. You don't want to be like, oh no, these guys can do no wrong, even if they're getting beat 6-0 currently. Like you
Yeah.
have to be able to really say what's true and try to stay in that level where you're talking about both teams evenly. Even if a team has thrown a couple of rounds, maybe they're down 3-1 and not looking so hot. Siege is one of those games that just like a snap, it can completely turn around. Maybe
Yeah,
the map is
don't
just super defender sided.
don't focus on the don't focus on the bad for too long. Hit it, talk about it, but do not focus on it. That is the thing. And try and like you're saying, being impartial, find something to talk about with the other team as well.
Unless it was an absolutely monumental throw that changed the entire course of the round, then you can kind of focus on it. Like for example, the example I used before, where DP fires in a 1v2 and Maestro swings. Like I talked about, everything that Team Rose did right, and why Thunder Logic was kind of falling off in that round up to that point, and then it was like, bro, but Maestro, come on, man.
Wow.
You had that round in your pocket, you peeked, you threw it away, and then the bandit stood there and held the cross. DP Fire I'm going to echo exactly what I said. DP Fire has played in the the top echelon of T3 for years. He knows you're both in the same room. He knows you're going to be holding a cross. Because after Maestro died, he just pre-fired where the bandit would be holding, and bandit just took it. So it's like, at that point, if it's a colossal misplay by one team, and that's the changing point in a round, then you can focus on it. But like Liz said, make sure you also talk about why a certain player, or how a certain player, or how the other team took advantage of that.
You got to do what feels right.
Yeah. Well, to a point.
Well, I mean, as long as you're educated somewhat of what you do, eventually, like I said, it's like observing. You find that tempo that works well for you, and we can talk about theory all day, but just like a normal practice in anything that you do, besides maybe, I don't know, mathematics, you got to do mostly a gut feeling kind of position as well, because theory and paperwork can only take you so far. You got to execute it and bring it home into your own flavor and make it your own craft to really have that audience reeled in and show them what kind of storyteller you really are.
Mm.
Yeah, and with that, that's kind of the last little bit that we had on our outline, but I guess we can turn it over to a full open chat, some rapid fire questions if you want to type
Oh, I
those
love
out.
questions.
Oh yeah, we
yeah.
actually have one
more
more
have
that was we have one that was added by a Blue Panda asking what should match prep look like. We kind of hit on this.
Imagine prepping for matches.
Yeah, don't ask Crow about it because Crow doesn't prep for matches.
Yeah,
I
I have my notes that I take on the fly, and because it's kind of that information. If your brain takes in information in multiple ways, you tend to remember it more. So I tend to just kind of remember what teams do. Again, because
I want to talk a little bit more.
Myself, but
yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about the traditional side of match prep that you that you'll see a lot that you see maybe a little bit more commonly, which is one of the biggest things is VOD reviewing, which is the act of going through and watching VODs of the teams that you're going to be casting to sort of figure out their play styles, the roles of players, what to kind of expect from the players. And if you have VODs of the specific matchup you're going to be casting that has happened previously, watch that. See how these teams have interacted in the past and see if you can sort of feel things out through there. And if possible, get other people to watch it with you to give you insight. If you've got a friend of yours who is a coach or is a competitive player or something like that, get them in there to help you out to understand something. And if you interpret something the wrong way, have them there so they can call you out and be like, no, this is there because of this, to help you, because the more understanding that you can gain from it, the better things can go, honestly.
I want to answer the question a little differently than everyone else has. Everyone else is giving great answers, but what I want to do is talk about like what you want to do before you start prepping for casting, because there's a whole different array of answers. For me in my past, going way back, sometimes it involves screaming in front of the mirror. Sometimes it makes, a pot of whole coffee, a few energy drinks. You gotta like warm yourself up, get rid of that anxiety, shake out your arms a little bit, scream in the mirror again. You gotta do whatever you can do to make yourself comfortable in front of in this instance, a camera or a microphone, and give the best performance possible. Because you don't want to start off all shaky. Oh, and honey. Drink a lot of honey because it lubricates your throat and makes it nice and not scratchy.
That's a good point. That's why I drink all the high fructose corn syrup lubricates my throat.
Yes.
Yeah, you're gonna die at like 25, dude.
What? How many Cokes have you drank this stream?
You're on like what, number 3?
How do you have teeth?
He's
This
either
is my-
3 or
This is my 5th.
He's only 5th. Oh my god.
I had
man.
one. I had one right before we started.
You better brush your teeth after the stream.
I do. So yeah, my pre-match prep,
Eat ramen,
Like-
drink Coke.
Oh my
yeah,
God,
is
you're gonna die at 25.
my pre-match prep is I always have a routine. I eat a bowl of ramen. I make and eat a bowl of ramen. That usually takes like 20 to 30 minutes. And I drink a bottle of soda. If I don't have soda, I'll drink an entire bottle of water, which I should probably do more often. And I just talk to someone. As long as my voice gets warmed up and I'm talking right before the cast, I feel like that does a lot of good for my voice. But other than that, there's not really. I don't know. I feel like I haven't really had much confidence issues because I just like casting. I just think I've always thought it was really fun, so I've never really had an issue with like being too nervous about it.
Well, for me,
Alrighty.
what it comes down
Oh.
to for me is that I just have like anxiety issues sometimes for really anything, and casting's no different. So it's just that the act of starting it can be rough no matter what it is. But not everyone's the same, and sometimes that's why you got to do your routine just to get yourself feeling really good, feeling comfortable, and in that mindset to present in front of possibly thousands of people with relative ease.
Yeah, it's just like one of those things you're trying to find. At the end of the day, you're performing. And if you have any sort of stage fright, there is a little bit of a difference between hopping on like a camera and a mic as opposed to standing up on a stage. But ultimately, if you want to follow your dream all the way up to the top, you're gonna be sitting on a stage and trying to project yourself to hundreds and hundreds of, maybe even thousands and thousands of people that share the same passion as you. I saw one more question of why do you do what you do? Like, why do we put ourselves out here and continue casting on this? I think ultimately it does just come down to it's a really great hobby, and I think we all share a passion for the growth of the scene and everybody that we've met with this game. And it's just ultimately it's the sense of community and trying to continue to further things such as the collegiate scene, which is what I'm mainly with. I've been bringing myself slowly into T3, but I think mainly collegiate is my space so far because both a player and a college student, it's just sort of where I feel as good. I know Crow, you just really love the T3 scene because you know every single player that has ever played on any team. If we want to reference the doc,
Oh
yeah.
gosh,
But-
that's something we haven't even talked about. I kind of want to throw it in there just for those of you who are unaware of it. The doc is something Crow has been working on for what, 4 years now?
It's the
3 years?
crustiest Google Doc document you're
3
ever gonna
years.
see.
Yeah.
3 years.
If you want to see what shame and way too much time on your hands looks like, it's a Google Doc document. It's what, 145 pages long? I don't even think I read.
It's 100. It's
I don't even think I've written
142.
that much in college.
It's 142, and what it contains is every single pro league roster that has ever
existed.
since season 1.
yeah.
And also any roster that led to an invitational spot, I think, was the other caveat.
Yeah, so any
Um,
miners that
yeah.
result in an invitational spot,
Like DreamHack Montreal was one.
Coupe
Valencia.
de France.
Yeah, the
for
Coupe de
Paris
France,
Major.
the Paris
How many
Major.
pages? 161 pages. That's what we're at. right now.
61.
Oh, yeah.
It's gone up 10 pages since I discovered it.
Well, because I had to add all of APAC, Latin America, including Sudamericano. So
Yeah, Crow has a
It's gotten bigger.
lot of pages and a lot of
I
time
don't
on
know
his
why.
hands to do
I always
this.
thought like I started it before Liquipedia was a thing for Rainbow, and the earlier stages are more complete than Liquipedia. Liquipedia is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At this point, I just keep it up to date for posterity. But back to the why do we cast question. I always thought it would be fun. At this point, it's just my favorite hobby that I have. My favorite hobby that I happen to get paid for. Like I just think it's fun. The only reason why I would want to grow and get up to T2, CCS T2 T1 is just because I think casting better teams would be more fun. I do this purely because I enjoy it.
I
Yeah.
go to school to be on TV, so I'm hoping to just do anything to be on camera.
I go to school to be a mechanical engineer, so I don't. This has no correlation. It's just sort of breaking the mold of, oh no, I'm an engineer. I don't know how to talk.
Yeah, I'm
But
going for
hey,
computer
I
engineering.
talk. I talk. It's kind of cool. It's kind of interesting. Like when a lot of people meet me, like if they have any conversations, they're like, "Oh, what do you do? Are you like a business major or something?" No, I'm an engineer, and they're like, I used to take that as like an insult, but now I realize that that's actually like sort of a strength. And being able to be outgoing can just build in different ways, especially in the casting scene of where we're putting ourselves out there constantly. We can have people hiding behind their keyboards on the other side of the globe say, "Why is this chunky monkey staring into my soul?" And I'm
Yo,
like,
you
"Yeah."
got called Chunky Monkey.
I
That
got
was
called a
funny.
chunky monkey the other day during a stream on ESA because I was just sitting there staring at the camera, just trying to maintain eye contact. And this dude goes, "Why is this chunky monkey staring into my
You don't
soul?"
read the chat during
That
your
was funny.
casting.
Oh no, I do. And then he proceeded to simp over me because for like the entire rest of the game because I don't understand how things work like that. But with that, yeah, I guess both Keg and Loaf still have to answer why they cast, why they do what we do.
I go to school for film, so I like to be on camera. Whatever it takes to get my voice and my face out there is what I'll do.
Yeah, I think why I cast is I think it's just become very enjoyable for me. It started out sort of the same with Crow. Is like it just started out as a hobby that I really enjoyed, and slowly and slowly, the more and more that I did it, the more and more I realized that I wanted to work to make it a career and make it what I did for a living, because it's just I don't know. I've just enjoyed it so much, and it's felt like it's felt like something that I could do for the rest of my life, and I would be perfectly happy doing it for the rest of my life, which is something that really hasn't it really hasn't happened with me for anything else before. It's really just been with casting that I felt that way.
Yeah.
Mhm. Definitely is a really great hobby. But I think at this point we've run out of questions, so we can just go ahead and close out. Did you guys want to plug anything like your Twitter or whatever? Say your names once again.
Yeah, I mean, come follow me on Twitter and Twitch and YouTube and all those other fun things. My name's Keglunek, KEGLUNNEQ. You can find me at all those places.
Yeah. Loafcasts on Twitter, Loafcast R6 on Twitch. Those are pretty much the only two platforms I use pretty actively. Yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Is that
I don't
number
even-
6?
What? Oh, my.
Yeah, Coke
How
number
much
6.
sugar can go in your body?
Look at and he's skinny too.
You're
That
gonna
was
go
bad
into
your
shock.
metabolism, bro.
I'm how tall? I'm 5'9". I'm short because I'm Asian. I'm 5'9", and I think I'm 126.
We're the same height. Well, I'm
Pounds?
5'10", but we're roughly the same weight. But, jeez, you're gonna die.
I have ramen daily, and I have soda daily.
It's gonna catch up to you.
When I go to eat fast food, I have like 3 burgers. It's great. Life's
I
great.
wish I had an Asian metabolism.
Yeah,
like-
wait, what were we plugging? Socials? I don't
Yeah.
use I don't
You're
use
active on
Twitch
Twitter.
because my internet's not good enough. I guess I have a Twitter. What's my Twitter at? Wait. I don't
Crow hee hee.
Oh, it is. You're right.
Yeah,
At Crow
it's
Hee Hee
Crow
with 2
Hee Hee.
E's. Hee hee.
Oh, hey, Blue Panda. Thanks for the follow, man.
Yeah, and I guess I've been moderating this panel. I also
Yeah, don't
cast a
follow
little
Connor.
bit. Yeah, I'm trying to get a Twitter presence, so CDAPS R6 as well as CDAPS R6 on Twitch. I occasionally stream if I have a comp match, maybe like a couple ranked here and there, but just mainly just for fun, the vibes. I'm sure
Are
you
any
can
of
cat.
us? I was gonna say, are any of us casting anything soon?
I was gonna say I'm doing ESA tomorrow,
Tomorrow.
ESA Siege, and then
Yeah, my bad.
what do you do? You do Monday for
Uh,
you, Keg,
I do every
on
day of the
ESA?
week at this point, pretty much. For different leagues. I'm getting into CS:GO of all places starting next week,
Ooh.
but I'm taking the weekend off. After this week, it's gonna be a whole different ball game. So again, follow me on Twitter, and you can see where you can hear my beautiful sultry voice at.
Yeah, Saturday. Saturday I'm doing EPS. Sunday I'm doing AGN. Those are two of the other three. The big three are ESA, EPS, AGN. So that'll be the next time I do anything.
Yeah, I'm waiting on some stuff. I think I'm taking a little bit of a break this weekend. I've gotta head back down to Knoxville for a couple of things this
Non-grinders,
weekend.
man.
Non-grinders.
SMH my
I'm
head.
It's
sorry.
it's called I have a life and I have a job that I'm trying to get. All right.
Yeah.
Alright.
I'm trying to move into my own place. All right. I need to figure this stuff out.
Yeah. And I guess we don't want to gloss over the collegiate. I don't exactly know CR6's summer league, but I know that CEA summer league is still going strong. It'll be starting back up next week. I believe I'll be casting on Wednesday for that as playoffs start. So that'll definitely be fun. Make sure to follow both the channels that we've been streaming to today, CR6 and CEA, because there's just a whole lot of potential in the collegiate scene. But with that, I guess we can go ahead and end stream unless any of you guys have any more pressing questions on our side.
No.
No, I'm good. I'm good. I think we covered just about everything in casting. Now, with this, if you go back on YouTube or wherever this goes, watch it, you'll be the best caster in the universe.
Yeah, ever.
Ever.
Maybe
Better than
Kickman
us.
and Taro can watch it.
I'll retire.
for tips.
Finally.
I just want to say
Alrighty.
again, Crater and Snail, I love you both. That's it for me.
Alrighty. Peace out, everybody.
So yeah.